Hello and welcome to the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your TAM Foundry author, Drogan1701, and with me is my crew of space monkeys, Greendragoon, Markhawkman, and DuncanIdaho.
I demand a banana.
Hello.
I refuse to admit that we were Googling space monkeys right before the show started.
It was
Why not
part
just admit that? Duncan was helping me find a beloved cartoon from my childhood, Captain Simeon and the Space Monkeys, which I'm going to have to go watch again somehow.
There were so many of those weird TV shows back then.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me started on the one where they brought a football team back to take the place of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Or Cadillacs and
I remember
Dinosaurs.
catching an episode of that.
Okay, but anyway, we're here for Star Trek, because once again the Foundry's down, I'm afraid. So we have to find other ways to entertain ourselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to play Star Trek Armada II. Now we played Armada 1 on this show, right?
Yep.
Yes.
A while back.
Just barely got it to work.
I gather this one was much easier.
It was, in fact, it ran on Windows 10 with a little bit of prodding. Somebody apparently released an unofficial patch that kind of helped.
Well, it's a newer game, so I would expect it to be easier to get it to run.
It's not that new.
It was only about a year or two newer, I think, right?
Right.
Yeah. So just for fun, this is the minimum system specs for this. It's a Pentium 2 300 megahertz or Athlon processor. Windows 95, 98, 2000 or ME. 64 megabytes of RAM. Quad speed CD-ROM. 1.3 gigabytes of uncompressed free hard drive space. Ooh, really getting up there. And so requires DirectX 8A. The supported chipsets, the video chipsets, are like the 3DFX Voodoo 3, 4, and 5, the Matrox G550, the Kiro 1 or 2, the Trident Blade XP, the NVIDIA Riva TNT2 or TNT2 Ultra, or the something AMD Radeon. So those were kind of these were the early days
of Voodoo 3. It was the first graphics card I ever bought.
Actually, this does have a little bit of significance in my PC gaming history. The first computer that I bought with my own money, I actually still have it in the basement. It's a compact desktop that I put a new power supply and graphics card into. The first game I installed and played on that was Star Trek Armada II. And I was, my computer was a big step up from the one the family was running at the time. So I was pretty amazed with how well everything was doing. It's basically kind of the equivalent now of actually buying a serious gaming PC and running Stone. It's like, oh, it's so much better. I actually get, full frame rate.
You can do like Garian likes to do and play it on a big screen TV with actually using the full resolution of the big screen TV.
Oh God! Can you imagine trying to play a game like this on the big screen TV when the resolution was like 680 by 4? Whatever?
Oh yeah, each pixel will take up like 6 inches of the screen.
Oh, by the way, the default resolution of this game is 800 by 600, and in fact, it insists on using that specific resolution for all the menus. So it's a little annoying because it keeps swapping between resolutions.
Well,
back when we were playing in 4x3.
Well, a lot of those older games didn't actually have built into the game a way for the game to dynamically resize itself.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually would coax one of them into running in a window and resize the window, it'll actually have the game itself centered in the window, and you'll just have this blank, empty space around the game.
Well, Greendragoon, why don't you fire it up?
Okay.
Because I know we're just looking at the box art at the moment.
The best aspect of games of this era were the effort they put into the cheesy pre-rendered intros.
Mm.
Oh yeah. MechWarrior had some great ones though.
I still miss, full motion video cutscenes.
Mm-hmm.
Another good thing for MechWarrior.
Yeah. MechWarrior, Command and Conquer had some good ones. And by good, I mean really bad.
I've seen some interesting YouTube videos about things that were like actual, like full motion video games that was just kind of like off the wall bizarre.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of things on YouTube, one of the Dune games, people have put up the entire just edited cinematic video for the full motion stuff.
Any number of games people have done that with.
But with the Dune one in particular, one of them stars Michael Dorn.
It does,
Interesting.
Yes. Emperor Battle for Dune is that one.
Yeah.
Which is a favorite of mine.
And yeah, he's playing basically the era's equivalent of Duke Leto Atreides.
It was sort of an alternate timeline Dune.
You could just sort of imagine it as like just a different era in that history because it had been going on for a long time.
Well, one of the more interesting things I've seen in the lists of games was how one of the first RTS like ground map games was actually a Dune game of all things, even though that's like the only time anyone's ever made an RTS of Dune. It was this one game, and the studio that made it went on to make other RTS games that weren't Dune and were otherwise nearly the same.
Yeah, that studio is Westwood.
Yeah.
They made Command and Conquer, and we're actually much more known for that, even though the Dune game came first, the first one.
Well, the one video I saw suggested that they had actually used a lot of the same art assets from the Dune game in their first Command and Conquer game.
Oh, I bet they did.
I mean, because it plays the same way. It's just that it's rethemed.
Mm-hmm. One thing I do want to say about what we're seeing right now on the screen, which is just basically just a run through of the various powers the ships can use. Just basically,
there's point defense. There's the torpedo, or that will hit one ship and then hit another ship and then another ship.
Oh, and chain reaction pulsar weapon, which I so wish we had instead.
Yeah. No, we do because when playing STO, when I got the Akira, when I'm leveling Akira class, I make sure it has the God, I'm gonna have to look it up. We have there's a console that it's originally for KDF, but the cross faction can be picked up from the exchange.
It's a lightning bolt.
It's not the lightning bolt. It's something that just bounces between ships. You get hit by a lot when fighting KDF.
Oh, I know what you're saying. Is it isometric something?
Yeah, the isometric. Yeah, the isometric charge. Because if you run that on an Akira, you get the basically a Star Trek Armada build to build with that guy. You can put a point defense on the Nebula, and it can actually be for me, it was, approaching Star Trek Online, even though I was playing the Starfleet Commands and Star Trek Legacy. Armada II is kind of what had, it basically kind of felt the most natural to think of builds and powers in this mode rather than the other games, because they didn't really have click to activate powers. It was much more strategic.
Yeah.
Anyway, the reason why I called the isometric charge a lightning bolt console is because the damage type is actually electric.
Here, I'm going to adjust the volume real
single
quick.
Player?
Yeah, hang on. I'm going to adjust the volume real quick. It's a little bit quiet.
Yeah, I can't hear the game at all.
I don't hear anything.
That's because I forgot to route it.
It's not important that we hear anything. It's, needs to go over the stream.
Okay.
Yeah. I played this a little bit of multiplayer too with my roommate, and we basically just had an arms race leading up to super weapons, and then it was who could deploy it best. There were some pretty good strategies with that, like between the Cardassians and the Romulans. My roommate used the Romulans, and basically at a certain point just uncloaked a certain type of ship, and then just leveled my entire base with subspace vortices.
Yeah, there's that one weapon where it just basically creates this giant rift in subspace, and anything inside the rift is like, bye-bye.
Yeah, I think that's the Dura class. There's a few. The Klingons have one that's sort of forward wave, but the Cardassians had one which I really liked, which is just the Dreadnought, but it has a big subspace vortex as its main effect. So one strategy with those is actually to send like a group of 5 or 6 of them at a base. Some of those would get destroyed, but generally the NPCs didn't build up enough defenses to take down all of them. So it's a great remote weapon, and then you basically send your main fleet in to basically clear up. So it's a great first strike with the Cardassians.
Go ahead and start it, June.
Of course, my favorite strat.
I tried playing at setting it when I was originally testing this. I tried setting it at 800 by 600, so it would keep the same resolution, but it was just a terrible resolution. How did we ever survive back then?
I keep looking back at Diablo 2, and when I first started playing it, I thought the graphics were great. Now when I look back at it, I'm like, wait, what is that moving pixel doing on the screen?
It always looks a little bit better in your mind.
I think Armada 2 holds up all right. The planets are a little bit like, yeah, but I mean, this was at the point where the 3D modeling was good enough that you could tell what it is, what it's supposed to be. It's a little crude, but it totally still works. Yeah, Starfleet Command though. I played Starfleet Command 3, and that was just like this game is totally different in my mind than what I'm actually seeing.
So why would the Borg colonize a world there? And how did they get so deep into the Alpha Quadrant undetected? Starfleet, in desperate need of answers, has dispatched the Enterprise along with several other Federation ships to investigate this latest Borg threat.
Okay.
Oh, those crazy Borg. They're at it again.
All right, so build a research facility to construct the Akira class and colony ships. Then colonize Regula 2. Build an orbital processing facility to provide metal. And then eliminate all Borg in the regular Badlands. Enterprise must survive.
Prepare the docking bays.
So, in a few...
You can... Go ahead.
I was going to say, in some earlier... I ran through this a couple of times to test things out, and I found an easy mistake to make is to build a ton of stuff right away before you can collect resources.
Yeah. You run out of resources, and then you lack the ability to build resource production facilities.
Yeah.
Station construction commencing.
I want to say
looks like you can zoom out much further on this one than the first game, which is good.
Yeah.
Insufficient metal.
All work crews report to station.
We are the Borg. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service us. Resistance is futile.
I liked playing as the Borg because my whole gameplay strategy was to save as many enemy ships as possible because I wanted to make them my friends.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the Borg by Lieutenant Tardigrade. Just friends!
That was like the best feature of the first game was that you could capture other enemy ships as any race.
And then the Borg made it real easy. And like, especially when I had like masses of tactical fusion cubes, yeah, I would basically try to capture like enemy star bases and production facilities, and basically set up other players.
And then so basically start producing their ships, but already assimilated.
Yeah, I mean it's just I'm trying to make everyone friends, and we're being reasonable about this, and I don't.
I was
just
going to suggest that while we'll play the main campaign for the first portion of the show, I think at some point we should switch over to just a
skirmish.
And play as the Borg.
What you can do in this is basically you can basically do spectator mode and set the AIs to actually fight each other.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I did that against watching two Undine players on a head-on confrontation, and I turned their build speed up to max, effectively unlimited resources, and I'm just seeing the most. Oh God! It was just the most frenetic RTS battle I've ever seen, and still have ever seen, even in like Sins of a Solar Empire, because it's like they would like one side would push the other back and be at the point of like just bringing the hammer down, finishing off, and then the other side would just completely rebuild, and then start the whole process over again.
Dragoon.
Yes.
Did you make the same mistake that you just told us about?
Where
you didn't build enough, you didn't conserve enough resources to actually build a resource generating thing?
Maybe.
Can you salvage?
Oh, that reminds me. One of the things that.
Yeah, I can deconstruct things.
Well. Well, one of the things that you kept doing in the Birth of the Federation thing was not reassigning your population, because one of the big things with that game in optimizing is that you have to, at least once every few turns, look to see what your population is doing, because you got 30 minutes into playing the game without realizing that you didn't actually have any population set to do research.
Yeah, I think it took us a while to figure that out.
Another thing in that game is that excess food, all it really does is increase your population's growth rate and your planet's happiness.
All right, now you might have the resources to.
What's funny is that
we need an orbital.
I don't think that's what that is. Oh, there you go.
You want to build a pancake thing with little pancakes on top of it.
Yes. The dilithium processing.
Oh, I thought he was talking about a Nebula class ship.
Not the mobile pancake with pancakes on top of it. The stationary pancake with pancakes on top of it.
Yeah, they really restrict your resources at the beginning here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I didn't.
Got to build things in the proper order.
Yeah, that's what I didn't like about the intro missions here. That they felt really. Yeah, it sort of felt like, I couldn't do as much with it. And that's where it kind of felt like the campaign didn't really hold up. Like, I really loved the skirmish matches, just AI bot matches, because that just felt, you had the full creative flexibility to really sort of delve into the strategy. And here, they kind of had an idea for how to beat a particular scenario, and you're following along with the logic, as opposed to,
Okay, your venture class, the little scout ship.
Yes.
Does it have a little thing to have it go scout on its own?
It does.
Oh, yeah.
Explore!
Explorer is what you want, I think.
Yellow alert activated.
We have completed a mission objective.
That was actually one thing that I intentionally did when I was modding Space Empires 5 to add the Borg and Orions, I intentionally gave them technologies that made it easier to do ship capture. Because, Orions are pirates that like hijacking enemy stuff and taking the crews of the opposing ships prisoner. And of course the Borg do their assimilation thing, so,
Yeah. What's funny about listening to some of these sound effects is that there's a mod for Star Trek for Sins of a Solar Empire that's just called Star Trek Armada II, which basically just uses the Sins of a Solar Empire to just basically do this. But they reuse.
And it's pretty fun too.
Yeah, and they use some art assets from Star Trek Online, like some of the miscellaneous character models. But then the gameplay is pretty interesting because it is that sort of step up at using the technical base of Sins. So different style of combat, but if people want to get sort of a fix of just basically Star Trek RTS, get Sins of a Solar Empire. I think you need to get like up to a certain level of the expansions. I think it's Rebellion, but you may need like one of the other ones too. Not quite sure.
They may have progressed in versions past last time I played it. So
yeah, but the
one
Rebellion.
I've played recently is Stellaris. Also has a Star Trek mod.
Oh yeah. So they're out there. I mean, we don't. It's one of those things where there are a few of these big RTSs coming around, but yeah, still not a whole lot more for Star Trek because you kind of just see much more of the smaller mobile and sort of strategy game development besides Star Trek Online.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're well past the age of getting, five AAA Star Trek games in a year.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would settle for getting the first and second game onto good old games.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Because I told you, Armada 1 was a royal pain to get running, and it barely did.
I remember because I tried it once, and it was quite the experience. So where's this planet you're supposed to colonize? Right there?
Possibly. Yeah, I think so. I think the purple is gravity wells.
You may have to get closer to colonize it.
I don't know that I want to send a colony ship out there with Borg running around until I can fortify this area. Although the Borg have seemed to have given up on sending their initiative. Never mind.
If I remember right, in these games, the enemies do actually produce units. It's just that at the beginning of the game, they have your best defense against their units is to force them to spend a lot of time sending them to attack you.
I remember in a lot of these games, AI tends to cheat.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of these games, it's not that the AI cheats, it's that the people who wrote the AI didn't have the ability to code the AI to do complex behaviors. So the AI scripting is actually incredibly simplistic.
Yeah, so they'll build up a force of a certain size and then immediately send it against you. So in these early levels, you're really not dealing with anything that's adapting to your strategy. So you just got to build a force large enough to sort of keep repelling them.
Also, one cheat that this particular game uses is that there's always a Borg scout ship flying in the general direction of your spawn point at the beginning of the game. Therefore, the Borg will know where you are and have you marked on their map so they know where to send their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, you don't, so. That's why we have our little scout ship going.
Yeah, and the one thing with these, basically the StarCraft style of RTS, which this is sort of in the mold of.
Basically.
You sort of want to sort of avoid over-turtling, because, yeah, there is that resources deplete around your central location, and these maps don't have that much, so you can wind up with a scenario where it's basically just a war of attrition over those resources, and eventually what'll happen is basically one side will break. I mean, they'll run out of resources and can't sort of keep the stalemate going.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times you don't need it, and you're better served by an aggressive strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially in these early missions.
And of course, there's always the whole thing of accidentally overstretching yourself and thus running out of ships to defend yourself, and then, no, my production facilities got blown up. That is the worst way to lose an RTS game, is having your mines get blown up because your combat units were distracted or something.
So,
Yeah.
Duncan, I'm kind of curious. In scenarios like this, do you take out the Enterprise or do you leave her behind?
I'll usually have it as basically the lead of a secondary defense force. So I'll have a main attack group and then just a few ships plus the hero ship defending the starbase. And then when I'm making my final push, I'll send the main forces in first and then bring in that secondary fleet as an auxiliary.
Okay. Because obviously we have the consideration. It's the most powerful ship I have, and it will get on this map. But at the same time, it's an automatic fail if they're just destroyed.
And of course, there's the whole thing of you don't want to lose your most powerful ship because you kind of might need it to defend your base.
Yeah.
Well, I'm working on the bases. These guys, I'll put a few more.
Starship complete.
A few more turrets here, and that'll kind of help keep my space secure. Luckily, I'm here in the corner, so I don't have a ton of
always good
area to have to defend.
I'll tell you what my problem always was in RTS games is I tended to be a turtle player. which nobody does in multiplayer.
No, everyone rushes to a certain extent.
Yeah, and so I just get my butt kicked in multiplayer, so I didn't even try.
Yeah, I mean, I've played a little bit of multiplayer. Like, the only one that I actually had some good success with was Halo Wars. But usually that level of success was, I would be holding up the team, and then I would be, you know, it would be like a 3-on-3 match. And me and the other guy would have done really, really well if it wasn't for a third player who was almost as good as AFK. I mean, it's happened a few times where I'm just like, will you please just do something? They sent out 2 warthogs. Yeah.
He sent out 2 warthogs directly at the enemy turret position. Yay, basically. Now we know where the enemy turrets are. And
oh, no, I already knew it. Well, he knew where to send them because I already done that level of groundwork of actually attacking the enemy base, but then this time it was basically just like, yep, that did absolutely nothing. Then he eventually just quits.
All right.
Yeah, our multiplayer in RTS is definitely a really hard thing to get right.
Yeah.
And
I've seen some RTSs that did it right. It's just that it's one of those like co-op multiplayer things where it's like couch co-op sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily like random strangers, although you can do it that way, as from what I've gathered.
Armed and ready.
So, a feature of Armada II over Armada 1 is warp travel.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Short range warp burst was so you can like just like hurry the heck up.
Not short range. They can do it continuously just outside gravity wells. So they would basically navigate around planets. They would have to slow down once they arrive near in the vicinity of a planet. So it kind of slowed down an enemy assault into a planetary system, or around a planet. But yeah, I mean, it allowed you to move around the map a lot quicker.
Enemy engaged.
All work crews report to station.
I build a second.
A prudent course of action.
Like I was thinking about whether I want to build a second starbase, but
do you have the money?
If you have it, it's actually a good defensive move because starbases are the powerhouse for defensive installations. So it is a good way of basically just doing that finale, because if you put 2 of them right next to each other, chances are they're not going to have a fleet in these early games that's going to be able to take care of that.
Well, they won't be right next to each other, but it'll help defend the colony.
Oh, you mean like put it next to your planet you just colonized?
Yeah. No, I do that just because it is sort of that.
It's a vulnerable position.
Yeah, it's a good insurance policy to have that out.
Prepare the docking bays.
Yeah, because starbases, once you have the resources, would be the core of your defensive. Then it would basically be torpedo turrets, and then if you absolutely have to, phaser turrets. Armada II did have an imbalance with basically the small little phaser turrets just weren't as good. They're just cheaper and easier to put down, so there's a little bit of strategy with that. But if you could, you just
this is also the first mission, and you're not likely to need all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is almost like a tutorial, almost.
Yeah. Can you build torpedo turrets in this? Like,
not in this version. I think I'm limited to phaser turrets.
Oh, that's what a lot of these games would do is they would have a tech tree where you had to unlock things in the tech tree, but for the tutorial version of the tech tree, it just didn't unlock certain things.
Yeah, they sort of held that.
They'd like to give you things gradually.
Yeah, and that sort of built a sense of progression over the campaign, and also let them introduce ships as parts of story beats. And the current StarCraft campaigns also do that too, and also make a little bit more of a game about it, where you can unlock certain things over others.
I think the only one of these games I actually played enough to actually get a feel for it was the Orion Pirates game. And even that one, I never really did what you would call beating the game.
Those Starfleet Command ones were interesting, because it was more about, almost a little bit more like STO's space combat.
Yeah, except
but not 3-dimensional.
Yeah, and it had some odd mechanics too, just with the sort of the emphasis. So this, I think, with the activating powers, is a lot closer to Star Trek Online's combat, like in terms of the actual gameplay. But you're dealing with a fleet, whereas the command games, it's all about micromanaging your ship, targeting enemy weapons at particular locations, dealing with the arcs. So basically, put these two together and you get Star Trek Online.
Well, also in the Orion Pirates games, if you disabled what were like genuinely critical systems on your enemy ship, the thing would be dead in space. And in the case of the ships with Mauler devices, it would basically just blow the ship to smithereens if you destroyed the Mauler. Why? Because as the game manual describes the Mauler device, the Mauler is not a weapon. It is a ship built, the Mauler is not a ship system. The ship is built around the Mauler because it's like the core of the ship.
So Ranger Ryu asks, for you guys who have played both of these games, which do you prefer, Armada or Armada II?
Armada 2 introduces a lot of cool mechanics that I enjoy having.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember story-wise which I prefer. I liked the story of Armada 1. I'm having trouble remembering what the story of Armada 2 was.
Wasn't it Omega dealing with the Borg dealing with Omega, and then there was also Species 8472 involved?
I want to say that was Armada 1. It was about the Omega.
It was right. Yeah, it was a bit of a melting pot plot from various past Treks.
So this has definitely got the Species 8472 because they introduced them as a playable faction, right?
Yes. So Cardassians are in this one. Species 8472 is in this one. Because I want to say it was just Federation, Klingon, Romulans, and Borg in the original.
Yeah, and then they added Cardassians in 8472.
Except for that one, there was like one mission where in the beginning of the Federation in Armada 1 where you're going off against some rogue Dominion. Oh, Dominion is in this one too.
It's one of the enemy factions. And then you also had Sona in Armada 1, right?
I don't think you can play
an NPC race.
Yeah, it was just one of those. Just one of the early introductory missions.
The Sona showed up.
I think it came out right after Insurrection.
Yeah. And this is pre-Nemesis.
Oh yeah, that reminds me of the most hilarious thing about Birth of the Federation is that people actually figured out how to mod the game to make it so that once you had absorbed a minor species into your empire, you could actually build the ships from that minor race. Which is something you otherwise would be completely incapable of.
Actually, just a thought. When we do the skirmish game tonight, play as 8472, not the Borg.
But the Borg are the fun ones.
8472 is also fun, especially with the basically the ultimate strategy for Turtle Wars, where you send your star bases on attack.
I have a goal of making a fusion cube in this game before the time is done.
Okay.
Weapons on that target.
I'd say send your fleet and attack.
Acknowledged.
I think I should now.
I mean, your overall goal is to exterminate them. The only real question is whether this would constitute overextending.
Adjust heading.
Nah, I think you'll be fine.
All work crews report to station. A prudent course of action.
Yeah, and this one too, since you have warp travel, it is easier to sort of correct for I've attacked them, and then all of a sudden you get attacked in turn.
Yeah.
So you can respond a lot easier.
Not sending heavy stuff against us. I think they've got similar restrictions.
Sometimes a lot of these games would actually give the AI resources and make the AI actually follow a resource usage scheme. It's just that the AI's methods of acquiring resources and the logic which follows it doesn't necessarily match the way players do it. Although some of these games would actually have it set up so that if you were to somehow sneakily destroy the AI's resource production at the beginning of the game, it would like horribly cripple the AI so that the AI just kind of like falls flat on its face because it doesn't know what to do. It would actually rebuild the stuff, just not quickly.
Depending on the game, going after their resources can be a good idea.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, like, I'm just looking at the interface here. This might
is under attack.
Like, I'm just wondering if it would just be a something that could conceivably be ported over to a tablet interface.
Yeah, it could be.
I mean, this game probably doesn't have a high enough processing power requirement to be unable to run on a tablet these days.
Yeah, like a mobile or tablet version of Armada would be interesting.
Armed and ready.
Speaking of going after the resource processing,
we happen to know the licensing guy for Star Trek, so let's talk to him.
Honestly, I mean, like I said before, good old games. I have a feeling this game is a bit of a quagmire.
Enemy engaged.
For licensing.
That Starbase is tearing through your guys there.
Yeah.
Helm, new course heading.
But yeah, that's Starbases.
You're right about Starbases.
Is under attack.
You need to start building more ships and lots of them.
Yeah, because you didn't even get through their shields.
But I did destroy their resource processing node, so there's that.
You did.
Probably would have been a good idea to retreat immediately afterwards.
Well, let's just say I learned some valuable lessons.
Got those shipyards. Have them start building.
On the upside, your bases do have some defense left, so you're not going to get overrun immediately as soon as an enemy frigate shows up.
Yeah. Well, I am also a turtle player.
I remember there was
a turtle player who just lost a fleet.
There were certain games, and I can't remember which ones. Might have been some of the Command and Conquers, where if you destroyed a certain portion of their buildings, they would basically take all their remaining units and send them at you at once.
Station is under attack.
I don't think the
in
AI
in a final rush.
Starship complete.
Is that like a suicide berserker attack or something?
Complete.
Basically. Just, there wasn't anything else to do at that point because they couldn't build anymore.
Starship complete.
Oh, right. So they're like, well, you crippled us economically, so we're going to go out in a blaze of glory.
Send everything we got. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Ranger Ryu. I think it may have been Red Alert.
That would be a nice feature in Sins of a Solar Empire, because what usually happens there is you cripple an enemy, and it just takes a while for them to eventually fold.
They just like slowly wither and die or something.
Yeah, pretty much, because you basically get to the point where you've crippled them, they're isolated, your fleet's on attack, and they'll just get whittled down, and they'll still keep their fleets in reserve. So they don't try to hit you like on behind or anything like that. It's basically you just corral them in, and that's kind of that.
Something I was totally forgetting is I got this research station. I have yet to. I guess I can't. That sucks.
There's nothing to research.
At least thought they'd let me get the Akira's the chain reaction pulsar weapon.
Oh, Ranger Ryu mentioned that EA is apparently remaking the first Command and Conquer.
Really? Interesting. Remasters are an interesting thing because it's, the question is, does it, it might look updated, but does it play like the old one? Which, can be good and bad.
Yeah, depending on the game.
Yeah. Go back. Okay, so Blizzard remastered StarCraft, the original one, which, it looks great. But it has all the limitations of the first one, like only being able to select 12 units at a time. That was super annoying.
Yeah.
But you get into the thing of, you know, if they change it, then, you know, is it really still the original game that you know and love?
Yeah, and for something like StarCraft, you're going to get a rabid enough fan base where they're going to be absolutely purist about how they handle that gameplay. One that was actually a good mix was the various Halo remasterings, because the gameplay is really modern, because it kind of set the standard format, but the technical side is a little crude by this point. So, yeah, playing through the Master Chief Collection or the Anniversary Editions, it's kind of the way to go, because it's just like, yeah, you just sort of get the best of all worlds.
So the problem becomes when it comes time to play Halo 3, which did not receive a remaster.
Oh god!
And you go from Halo 2, which looks fantastic, to Halo 3, which is its original self.
Yeah, and it's funny because you go to Halo 4 and it's on the same platform, but it looks so much better. I think Halo 3, it's one of those games. It was great fun at the time, but I think of the entire series, it's the one that has aged the least well. Because it's insane too.
And they didn't get back the same voice actors, which it's a shame.
And then they did a lot of changes on the art design, and that one again, great fun back in the day, but ODST was sort of the better implementation of kind of the story idea. Because it's you set up the defense of Earth, and it's like, no, just 2 missions. Going back. Gonna kind of repeat the same plot.
No, not that plot. Oh wait,
yeah, it's kind of good for Foundry authors to kind of take note when you're sort of looking at games like that, where it's basically you're sort of going in and sort of noticing like where the setup is and where sort of the plot points are going, and then if a game dodges to the side in favor of something else, you always want to question: is this actually servicing those needs? Because for Halo, it's like you had this great big setup, and it just decided to be about something else. And it's like, is that as interesting? And in a lot of respects, the answer is no for Halo 3.
Ooh, it's an inexhaustible dilithium mine.
You must capture it.
Destroying the Borg force.
Oh yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed in a lot of these is that you start out with a few production facilities that are actually rather crappy, and the AIs get all of the good ones.
Acknowledged.
You need metal, so
a prudent course of action.
Is that actually Brent Spiner, or does it just sound like Brent Spiner?
Oh,
it's not
Ranger
Brent,
Ryu?
It's just a generic voice.
Okay, so Ranger Ryu asked me a question. The answer is, without a doubt, Halo Reach.
You don't like Reach?
I don't like Reach. I liked it the first time through. It sort of has got some really neat ideas. But it sort of was the start of Bungie getting a little bit off. With like that one, it was gameplay. It was sort of the art design. And yeah, it was just kind of like, it was an odd mix. It was sort of like, it might have been a better sort of first game of something. But
it was a prequel.
Well, yeah, it was a prequel, but at the same time, it was, oh man, I mean, it had some problems. I mean, if you're going into multiplayer, just armor lock. I mean, just enough said.
you know, I don't hate Halo 5 or anything. I just think the story went to a really predictable place.
Yeah, I mean, it was what I thought they were going to do from the very beginning. I think Halo 4 was brilliant in all respects, and
yeah,
it got the gameplay out of the ditch Halo Reach left it in, and then gameplay for 5 was spot on. I mean, I really like that. I even liked Locke as a character.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great sort of successor Spartan.
Well, and how can you not love a Spartan team that has Nathan Fillion doing one of the voices for it?
So it has those great things. I really like you know, basically that whole arc with the Covenant, like with the elites. But I think it's like all the stuff with the Master Chief is what lets it down. Oddly.
Yeah, it's a character thing. You know, it negates all of the awesome character stuff they did between him and Cortana in Halo 4.
Oh yeah, and it just sort of I felt like, if they just like left that all like ambiguous and just an entire game about Locke, that would have been brilliant.
Mm.
And then the whole reveal at the end is that instead of the master or Cortana going rogue, it's the Master Chief who's sort of, it's him and Cortana who are now opposing Locke, and that's the sort of the big punch at the end of the game. So it feels like they kind of pulled their punch a little bit and didn't go for the good creative, the creative choice, and tried to hedge their bets with fan expectations. Which is again another good advice for Foundry authors. Just sort of like go for the throat. I mean, go for the the news plot threads and ideas.
So
and
if you have an idea, really go for it.
Yeah, I mean, because at the very least, I mean, it's much more memorable than if you sort of played to the same conventions.
Which ironically is what we've been talking about with Voyager lately.
Yeah.
The idea that Voyager had this premise, which was very cool, and didn't take it to the full extreme.
Yeah, because it's another one of those things where it does feel like they're really trying to compromise with a lot of different ideas for a Trek series. It ends up feeling very conventional. I mean, almost to the point where you don't.
It's TNG
light. Yeah, you don't even like. If you didn't see the intro of the series, you'd almost just imagine they're just going through TNG. They're just in the Alpha Quadrant.
Yeah. Or
they're just on a normal exploration mission. It just sort of the entire drama of the setup of the show was just sort of not there through a lot of that series.
That's why I always say it's a good series, but it could have been great.
Yeah. Oh man, because I mean, it's one of those things I kind of like to do is just sort of a oh god, I had an idea. I posted on Twitter and just what I would like to see in the sort of the vein of Voyager, but just done now, because I think they could do a lot more with a Voyager style show done with the Discovery format, or basically just do for a season Discovery. Just
it would be something that would benefit from that smaller episode count,
and then the not having to deal with syndication.
Yeah.
And then I think
not having to go back to status quo every week.
Yeah, and then I think for a status quo show, you could still do that, but you'd have to change it to a setting that really works well for it. I think something like Draco Tavern, where you have a central location, like a starbase or something else that's not moving, and then you can just do a serialized format like that, and maybe have that as a lighter show. And then the one with a progressive arc is the one where you do a darker show. So you can even have different styles of Star Trek at the same time.
One suggestion I've seen, which I'm not sure that any TV producers would go for, is the idea of having a show where they don't really have a set cast for the show. They just have a bunch of recurring characters, which may or may not be in this particular episode.
I think every fan you talk to has an idea for a Star Trek show.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm not going to tell you that all of them are great ideas, but there probably is a few in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean, because
I don't know if any of mine are great.
I mean, you get 1,000 different pitches for a TV shows. One of them has to be good, right?
I'm not sure what the ratio is for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, basically, you could calculate that as the total number of prospective scripts submitted to the entertainment industry versus how many good shows there are. For how to get just go through the entire process from getting something from being good on paper to actually being good in demonstrated.
Yeah, and of course, being good doesn't necessarily mean successful.
Yeah.
Either.
So,
well, there's multiple ways of defining good. Some of them are not based on whether they're financially successful. Some of them are more like whether it's something that's easy to produce. That's one way of defining if something's good.
That's another issue is how much does it cost?
That's why we got so many seasons of Whose Lines Is It Anyway?
Mm-hmm.
You get five guys together, film crew, and
that's another.
So one of the cool
that's
features.
an interesting
a lot of
thing
them.
about the Green Lantern animated series they did recently
Starship
is that
complete.
instead of having sets and actors, they just used CGI for everything, literally.
Well, you remember Sanctuary with Amanda Tapping? That show was very, very cheap because they virtually built no sets.
Mm. I watched that show, and I always found it to be rather weird the way they constructed everything in that show. But I mean,
There were a lot of
not
shots
lot-
where it looked real fakey. I can say that. It was still a good show, though.
One of the cool features of Armada 2 over
it had
Armada 1
a lot
is
of
the support
interesting
for.
plot devices, though.
Go ahead, Dragon.
Is the support for vertical.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I was just noting that. Because especially when it comes to the placement of the mines, you want to get that distance as low as possible.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, if you're doing multiplayer, you can just be really annoying with that, and just like I'm just going to build my entire base up just to increase travel time.
'Cause, in the first one, it was in a 3-dimensional space, but you only moved in 2 dimensions.
That's what that always annoys me in games because of the fact that sometimes there are weird little I'll call them exploits because I don't know exactly what the right word for it would be, but it's just things where you can make things go to a different altitude even if you don't have the ability to actually move things to a different altitude that they start at.
Station complete.
Kind of weird.
All right. Build a couple of.
Starship construction commencing.
And now we have limitless dilithium.
At the moment you said limitless dilithium, I looked at I've got for the viewers, I've got Star Trek Online here and then Armada 2 in a little window so you can follow along, but the moment you said limitless dilithium, I looked at how much ore my Delta Recruit has unrefined. It's 500,000.
Status report.
And then you calculate the number of months it would take to refine it all.
That's why I haven't been playing
have a pretty
that
decent
much.
little fleet there. I'd go on the offensive.
That's exactly what I'm gonna do. Unfortunately, I can't take all of them at once because there's a size limit on fleet
Oh yeah,
size.
but that's what you do. You do. Well, this is where you do the hotkeying for the fleet. So it's you have
control
group 1, group 2,
1 or whatever.
Yeah, control 1, control 2, and then you can just basically control them just in real quick succession.
Oh, yeah, if I remember, didn't Birth of the Federation do that too, where you could only have like 9 ships per fleet or something?
Yeah, it's a feature
might
of
have, yeah.
a lot of games in this era where you can only, you select so many. StarCraft did it. Yeah, everything I played did it.
Yeah. Thankfully, more modern games have.
New course heading.
Imagine that in Sins of a Solar
Unlimited.
Empire. I've got 13 fleets here.
There's actually one game I can think of where they kind of like faked bypassing that by making so that while you could only have like 9 ships per fleet, you could
Bring us into
have like a bundle of fleets. So you could just give several different fleets orders simultaneously, and they. Oh wait, what it was? You could multi-select fleets so that when you gave orders, you could give orders to multiple fleets simultaneously, and they would actually follow out the orders simultaneously.
I think we're going to destroy this Nexus.
Yay!
It's damaged.
System is under attack.
Yeah, it'd be a lot easier if your Cure classes had the ricocheting power.
Yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
more powerful against fleets than it is.
Oh yeah, but it's just an additional hit to launch off of. Yeah, against a fleet because you just get all the successive hits. Here you just get that one, but that's still a little bit more than.
Well, also, didn't those special weapons basically just give your ships another weapon slot, kind of like, with Stowe and having the experimental weapon tacked onto a ship that's already 4-3?
No, it was more like just an active console. So you would have it,
Oh.
and you hit the button, and because I don't think the AI would either like deploy immediately. You could set the behavior, or like you basically wait for your order. So you have that brain button, and then you can decide when they would use something. Because for sovereign classes, they would have the carbonite reflector, so it's just a reflective shield against torpedo hits, I think. And then, if you basically let the AI do it, your entire fleet would just start glowing the moment they entered combat. Because the other thing about the one thing I didn't...
So you got that base, but that must not have been the last one. If you want, you could switch over to that skirmish now.
Adjust heading.
Yeah.
Since we know how long this takes.
It's not like we're going to get very far into this story anyways. Let's go up again. Let's take out this guy, but then we'll switch over.
All sections stand by.
Enemy engaged.
Fire. Full bursts. Adjust heading. Bring us into weapons range.
That's kind of an interesting thing that the
All sections stand by.
NPCs would do is when their bases started losing personnel, they would try to beam over personnel to support it.
Yeah.
All right.
Ranger, I have only played Halo Wars 2, but I do like it. It's not an easy game. It seems like the difficulty is quite tough. You know, you lose a lot of units.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you can't do that. Because I played Halo Wars 1 a lot. I haven't played Halo Wars 2 yet. It's on the list. But yeah, it's one of those games where you can't be afraid of losing people. There's certain strategies that allow you to be a little bit more conservative, but there's others.
You're getting shoot up by that space station.
Yeah, well, it's a space station. Oh man, yeah, you might want to pull back, because by the time you're actually destroying that space station...
Adjust heading.
Because, I don't think you've got the firepower. Yeah, you don't have the firepower now to take on that station.
Alright, well, let's switch over.
The RTS I've played most is actually the Age of Empires and Age of Mythology games.
Those are fun.
More Age of Mythology than Age of Empires, but you know.
Borg, and let's go against the Federation.
Well, are you just going to do a one-on-one, or just do a massive free-for-all?
Do like a 2-on-2.
Yeah, 2v2. I mean, just to mix it up from the last mission.
Okay.
So I would do 2v2. Yeah, 2v2 would be a good one.
Who does the Borg team up with?
8472.
Okay, so bizarre scenario where the Borg and Species 8472 have teamed up.
Versus who?
Let's say Federation and Klingons.
All right.
Yeah.
They're a classic. They're a classic duo.
You do Federation Romulans just for that little bit of another odd couple.
Okay. It is so desperate that the Federation has joined with the Romulans.
Or another Borg player.
my favorite part of the Path to 2409 stuff is that part where you see in the lore where there's that one border world that while it's populated by Romulans who used to be loyal to the Romulan Star Empire, they've decided that they're sick and tired of the Romulan Civil War. So sick and tired that they don't want to be part of either side. So they apply for Federation membership.
Alright, so okay, so we got a planet right here to work with.
Yeah, they give you a planet, they give you a resource node. Nearby, you'll also have your other resource types.
And your Your ally is over there on the other side of the map.
Yeah. Oh, I have a strong defensive position here in the...
Yeah, get one of the corners versus one of the midpoints, because those are the hard ones, because you're probably going to get... Well, you're going to get hit from two sides, but this one you can kind of just funnel everything into a certain choke point.
Well, it's not like we expect you to win.
Not on the time we have. Alright, so I am trying to remember, is it different for the Borg as to collect resources from the planet?
Oh, from the planet? Oh god, what did they have? There's something. Do you build something around it? Oh.
I guess the resource processing node does both. Double duty.
Okay. Yeah, what I can remember is that they don't use latinum.
Activate all alcoves. Confirmed. Initiating station construction. We will comply.
And the transport capes are so fun.
Yeah.
Guess where my tactical fusion cube's about to go.
Initiating station construction.
Although sometimes getting the tactical fusion cube to fit in the tube was, yeah, a little hard.
Run passive subroutines.
Get you exploring, because you're pretty much useless as a defense.
Nice thing is you can see where your ally has explored.
Initiating vessel construction.
Oh yeah, shared intelligence in RTS games is always fun because it basically means well, it's like the old knowledge is power thing. Just twice as much knowledge.
It's not like in the Total War games where you have to go ask your allies for their map information and they can refuse you.
Since our Empire has...
By your command. Vessel construction complete. Confirmed.
Yeah, with
that was a clear Battlestar Galactica reference there.
With the
Fire Command.
What I was just going to say, though, is for the AI behavior in this game, what I always did is basically use the... basically, my AI partner is a scout dog, and they would not really have the ability to take out enemy bases or really kind of put in that effort, but they would always sort of be on the lead. So I would basically, like, you have my main fleet, and then they would go, send an attack party in there, and then I would back it up. So they start doing really well when, two tactical fusion cubes were just deciding, I'm going to ruin everything. Although I will say, in the entire history of playing Star Trek or Armada II, I've not lost a tactical fusion cube.
I'm sure I have because I was overconfident.
None of them have ever exploded. It came really close once when the enemy, the crew complement got down to the point where the enemy took it over. And then that became a rescue operation. And I successfully recaptured it with a bunch of like 4 other tactical fusion cubes. Actually, I think it was 2 tactical fusion cubes and a regular fusion cube.
Okay, so it didn't get destroyed, it got stolen and you had to steal it back.
Yes, and I successfully did that.
All right.
Yeah, and just like the fact that I stole it back with 2 more tactical fusion cubes and another fusion cube, this kind of puts the military perspective into engagement for that particular mission.
So here's where the Borg are really cool, is their assimilation. Because you can build the simulators that are basically will tractor beam the ship and then basically drain their crew and beam drones on board.
Yeah, and cubes have that ability too, and they'll also hold ships in place with the their tractor beam. The one thing I'll say though for Armada's sort of fleet structure is that it is very progressive. So there's some ships that have the special abilities, and they're good to sort of mix in there. But for the most part, you're just sort of like building to the max of the tech tree. So like for the Federation, the best fleet would typically just be of mostly sovereign classes, maybe a few nebulas. Yeah, it's a little simplistic. And then here it's basically just like build, get to the point where you build tactical cubes and then tactical fusion cube and then just send one or two over and kind of just win.
Well, one of the interesting things with Space Empires 5 is that you don't actually have the ability to capture ship crew. The way ship capture works in that game is you just you kill the crew and then you beam over people to fly the ship for you, and then it's your ship.
Actually, I think isn't that what simulators will do? Is that they'll drain crew, but they don't automatically replace it? Because I think that's like the upgraded ability from the cubes. The cubes will do that, but I think for these simulators, you have to do that one extra step, maybe. I mean, we'll see.
Well, what I did when I was programming in the special ship capture technologies is basically just give them better ways to kill enemy crews than what the standard abilities.
Assimilation complete. Station construction complete. Vessel construction complete. Vessel construction complete. Vessel construction complete. Insufficient drones.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about spheres too much because their big ability is just a little bit more healing.
Yeah, I'm just mixing around.
Yeah.
Initiating vessel construction.
All right, what else can I build?
It's funny with the auto simulation too, with the simulators. When you see a ship fly in some kind of formation, they all just sort of beam it at once, and then it's just like, oh, my ship.
Doink.
We serve the collective.
The sort of the highlight cam too is a pretty good feature of Armada.
Well, one of the things. Okay, you guys may or may not have played this game, but you remember this old game called Stars?
Oh, there's the Federation. I'm guessing the Federation's up in this corner. I'm gonna steal you. Go this way. I have a good feeling about that. Oh, and there's a Romulan ship, so I bet you the Romulans are down in this corner. You. Go down here.
Yeah, I mean, you basically, there's not many places that can be left. Your AI did a pretty good job of sort of narrowing it down to 2 regions.
Initiating vessel construction.
Oh, the Venture class. We still don't have that.
And, who knows?
They haven't added a whole lot of small craft recently, have they? Just a few.
Yeah, because that's that's kind of the problem with that ship is that it's basically just a shuttle. So just randomly thinking of, something that you could do in Stowe is okay. So if you made a Borg cooperative faction, which I know, there's certain faction of players that absolutely want that and certain faction that absolutely don't. Actually, one thing I'll just add real quick. Cryptic says they'll get to it eventually. So it's on the slate.
But what I'm thinking about...
People ask about it in live streams incessantly.
Yeah. What I'm thinking about as far as, a mechanic, what if you had something that was like, you would basically partially assimilate an enemy ship and it would fight for you.
Ooh.
Yeah, it could either be permanent or it could be temporary until, say the crew regains control.
Yeah, because it could...
Or it's like a system override of some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
because that'd basically be a way of just like scramble sensors where you sort of flip enemy, basically allegiance, and I mean there are already mechanics in place for that, and also you could do something maybe similar to basically a simulation on ground, where it operate, basically you have that mechanic. So
it'd be kind of fun to assimilate an NPC, and then he just follows you around and fights for you the rest of the map.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely changed the way you approach combat because, you're definitely going to be making different cost benefit.
You could basically add to your away team more and more as the thing progresses.
Oh god, especially if you could keep doing it. Oh man, that might get broken though.
Yeah.
Especially if you make certain decisions like I want that transwarp gate. Because then how do you like handle it if it's like an objective?
It's a question. See, I'm an ideas guy, then you would hand it over to a details guy, and he has to think of all that crap.
Negotiation is irrelevant.
Oh, didn't get to keep my assimilated Defiant.
Oh. Because that's the hard part, because once you assimilate that chip, it's basically sort of in it's in a tricky spot, because it's usually pretty low health, and it's in the middle of combat, so...
Oh, speaking of, I want me in a Kira class.
Make it friend. Yay, we make friends. And Lieutenant Tardigrade Huggle beams. Because they're blue.
Invalid objective.
How about you?
Collective must grow.
Oh, you want to be careful though, because your guys are beaming. And their shields go down when you do that.
I don't know. No, they don't, because it's through the tractor beam.
Okay, because I noticed someone was using their transporter and then got exploded.
New directive. We are the Borg. Negotiation is irrelevant.
Yeah. Catch yourself an Intrepid class.
Yay!
Relocate to grid.
Can't have you collecting resources.
Unassimilated species engaged. By your command. Confirmed.
Alright.
Activate all alcoves. Confirmed. Initiating station construction. Initiating vessel construction. The collective must grow. Vessel construction complete.
Why can't I?
The collective must grow.
Like, that's... Oh, is it because it's because someone already... Yeah, someone's already colonized that planet. So you need to blow it up first. So you need some unit with like...
Wait, you mean in this game you don't have the ability to assimilate enemy planets?
You do, but just not directly. So you have to take out their colony first, and then I think you can take it out. Because, it's got the blue icon around it when you highlight, so it's owned by someone else. But to take out the planet, you either need to build that, because they can't attack it either. You need, like, a battleship.
Doesn't let me attack.
Yeah, you don't need it. You can't do a standard unit. You have to use a different type. Or what about transport?
Vessel construction complete. Activate all alcoves.
Yeah, you have to take it directly over, but this might be a losing battle because it's a planet.
Initiating new directive.
Because, you might have to build a specific type of unit to attack the planet.
Vessel construction
Until you get to cubes, because I think cubes will be able to attack it directly.
Well,
It's been so
one thing
long
that's a
since
bit awkward in Space Empires 5 is that their approach is that you, anything with cargo can do a ground assault. All you just have to do is give it the order to drop troops from its cargo. The trick here is, of course, that it has to actually have troops in cargo, which you have to build at Starbase or planet.
See, guys, this is what should have happened to Voyager.
Completely assimilated, and then it was, just a Star Trek Borg show.
Star Trek Borg.
Actually,
that's when you have an entire season in Unimatrix Zero.
In Star Trek, in Star Trek Enterprise, they did actually kind of sort of show that sort of thing. It's just that in Star Trek Enterprise, the way it worked out was that while the Borg did assimilate the ship, it didn't leave it as it was. They started I guess you could say that the Borg thought of it as improving the ship.
By the end of the episode, it's almost like parts of it start looking like a cube.
Yeah.
Great Primarch should have kept that. But again,
state new directive. By your
I
command.
think it inspired the way Cryptic designed the partially assimilated ships that you see in Star Trek Online.
It'd be a good sort of design direction for Borg co-op faction, because there are certain problems with using a perfectly symmetrical ship in, Star Trek.
Yeah.
Well, see, we do actually have something that's very important to think about along those lines in the game already. And you remember what it's called, right? Borg Type 3. Oh, yes.
Now see, if I've long had this theory that in terms of actual space travel, the most efficient shape for a spaceship should be a perfect sphere with engines on all sides of it.
If you wanted to say
so you don't
something
turn.
that could change,
You just go.
Mm-hmm.
We need to go this direction. Okay, so we just go. We don't have to turn.
Yeah, because that is actually something that for General Products hull, I think, I forget which type it is, but yeah, that's basically one of the standard ship types for the Larry Niven known space universe.
I didn't figure I was the first to ever think about this.
But no, actually, I'm just saying someone actually put it into practice. It actually sort of had this sort of one of the core ship types as a perfect sphere with an indestructible hull, because it's one macromolecule.
Interesting.
Well, so transparent.
Unable to transport.
There's all kinds of good, cool sci-fi concepts out there.
Yeah. Larry Niven, Ringworld, definitely one of the. Oh man, it's just such a great mix.
We are the Borg.
Well, Larry Niven had a bunch of ideas that were good, some of which that were just straight. Why?
Basically, if you skip through World of Batabs, you get you're saved from that by quite a bit. But yeah, Flatlander.
I forgot about the Ferengi ships in this. They just randomly go in and steal any disabled ship.
Oh man, I mean, like in any of these games, because of my playstyle, Ferengi were my #1 enemy threat. I mean, it's just
of course
more
you can't beam over. You can't take their ships. Oh, I guess you can.
No.
Oh, you can.
All right, you.
Is irrelevant.
Oh, I guess it. Even if you control it, you don't control it.
Yeah, because it just you give its crew back, and then it just sort of goes on its merry way.
And by the way, this is how Best of Both Worlds should have ended.
We require regeneration. Relocate.
Well, I mean, I do remember hearing that weird rumor about that. That's part of the reason why they introduced the Commander Shelby character, is that they were planning on killing off Picard and making her Riker's first officer or something.
Well, the story goes that they weren't certain if Patrick Stewart was going to come back for the next season, so they were basically setting up where they could continue with Captain Riker.
Yeah.
Oh,
Although,
I see.
I don't know if they would have kept Shelby or not, but maybe.
Yeah, it at least added a sort of interesting dynamic for the setup of the episode, because the narrative parts were there for Picard to be removed from the show. So even though it went back to the standard syndication of eventually it works out and sometimes it's mentioned again, but it is sort of that nice sort of complementary angle to the episode where you sort of the audience can imagine one way it's going to go. Which isn't the way it goes, but that ambiguity does lend to the compellingness of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Although I'm not personally one who says that wondering if your characters will make it out alive is the only drama.
Yeah, I'm definitely not.
I'm perfectly okay if I know the characters are going to make it. Or if I know they die later, I don't care.
Yeah.
There's still plenty of drama to be had.
I'm one of those people where I have never actually been able to understand why it is people are like paranoid of spoilers, because for me, it's not knowing the destination that makes the story interesting. I mean, I can guess the destination often enough that it's not a surprise.
Yeah, I like at this point, like for most major movies and series I go into, I'm actually actively reading the spoilers because it is two very different experiences, like not knowing and then knowing. But for me, I do like the knowing part, just so I can appreciate the episode. I can appreciate what it's doing rather than just getting absorbed by the what's going to happen next. I mean, I was like that with The Martian. That made The Last Jedi for me a lot more likable. Like when I actually had an idea for the plot. Also,
for The Martian, I mean, you knew they were going to get back. There's.
It wasn't 100%.
It wasn't going to be that kind of movie. I didn't think so anyway.
What I was worried about was just the idea that, like, the start of the movie would be the entire the Martian expedition gets wiped out except for one guy, not what they actually did, which is the flip side of that, where one guy gets left behind. Because I thought it was just going to be that, almost standard like disaster movie type script.
It's not quite that dark.
Yeah, so that's what for me is like, oh, I actually really like this because it actually did something that was quite a bit lighter.
And it did honestly one of my absolute favorite movies of the last 5 years.
Yeah, for me it's that, The Last Jedi, and kind of it. Yeah, The Last Jedi was the last one I actually spent money to acquire. It's like, I must have this.
Okay. Here's one thing that I'm not sure if you guys would agree with me on, but it's one thing I've personally always felt is that the hallmark of a good mystery story is if a viewer can figure out how the story will end before it actually ends.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just throwing randomized plot elements out there. And I think the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes are a really great example of that, where you can go through the logic and really they do a really great job with the presentation. Versus, say, Agatha Christie Poirot, which are really interesting, but sometimes the answer is out of left field.
Yeah.
Well, it's I like watching a couple of not a lot of procedurals, but a couple like NCIS, and you can pretty much figure out okay, it was that one guy they met for 5 minutes at the beginning of the episode. That's who did it.
Well, see, it was.
But that's okay.
TV shows, you can actually guess based on how they introduce a character, whether it's a bad guy or a good guy.
Yeah.
Even if they don't say anything at all about why the character's there. But see, that's because of the fact that you've learned to recognize the way the writer of that series thinks, not necessarily because of the writing itself.
Yeah, you see it through the
there's a particular a convention for these types of shows.
Yeah, CSI, you can really get that and you get into the pattern for that because you do notice what they're going to try to set up for a dramatic turn. So you're expecting the dramatic turn, so you can see where they're setting up the potentials, how they're introducing a character, and it's like, oh, it's actually going to be the little girl because she thinks she's so much better than the rest of humanity.
And
a dark reflection on childhood.
because you know about these things, it becomes, that's not the point anymore. The point is to enjoy the characters.
Yeah.
And enjoy them figuring out the mystery.
And that's what I basically got into CSI Miami for, because it's just the show of David Caruso.
Him and his ridiculous cold open puns.
Yeah. Just waiting for it. You're waiting for it. It's like, no, here it comes. And that's good.
I can make cubes.
Hey.
No, not the cube.
You get 8, build 8 of them. That's step 1. Then you work.
I will overcome the one major mistake the Borg always kept making and only sending 1 cube.
You send well,
send
actually,
every cube.
No, you can still send 1. You just make it an increasingly larger cube. Because who's to say you can't make a tactical fusion cube with tactical fusion cubes? You can just keep scaling it up.
At some point, it stops being a Death Star and starts being like an actual star. So
once it reaches,
it gets
the point
so massive it collapses in on itself.
That's the point when you know you've gone too far. But you just do it just up to that point, and you're good.
That was a feature of the Shatnerverse novels. Get a lot of aside looks from the community, but I like at least the first few of them, and the Return had some interesting things with the Borg in it, and like sort of modular ships, these like smaller cubes that could basically arrange themselves into shapes.
Oh, actually, that's one thing that was interesting, is that he postulated that the reason why the Borg liked the cube design is actually because of the fact that they could basically just like build them out of smaller things.
Yeah,
and then you could fit them together like Voltron.
And this one thing, they actually dismantle a Unimatrix so that they can reassemble it into a fleet.
Yeah, I actually really like that for the reason that you can really play it off the adaptation angle. And it's very physical versus just basically a techno-magic space power that you can do versus in very simple TV special effects.
There were 2 particularly weird things that happened in there, though. Is that one is the Borg declared that Spock had already been assimilated, even though he didn't have any of the cybernetics, because of the fact that he had mind melded with V'ger, and that V'ger was some sort of bizarre form of Borg that assimilated things by digitizing them and making the digital copy part of the collective somehow. It's not a like physical form of assimilation, but like a we have assimilated the yeah. So because of that, the Borg would actually see Spock and react to him as if he was a Borg drone, even though he didn't actually think like a Borg.
Yeah, he just basically, he was registered as one of part of their system.
What was it? I think one of the only Shatnerverse.
One of the plot. Sorry. Well, one of the plot points associated with that, though, is that Starfleet Command had identified that there was some sort of like a super high level security leak that they hadn't been able to identify. And this security leak had, for unknown reasons and through unknown methods, been feeding information about Starfleet's, stuff to the Borg. Well, it turned out that it was actually Spock, because of the fact that this connection, it wasn't that Spock actually had like a non-existent connection or like he actually did have a proper connection that the Borg could actually see everything he was doing.
Huh, I guess I did manage to take over their station.
Oh, good.
Okay, I got enough of a fleet. I'm going to.
You have a nice number of Galaxy class ships now.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me. One of the funny things with Space Empires 5 is that you can capture enemy ships and then upgrade them. But when you upgrade enemy ships, they get reconfigured into the you have to upgrade them into a design that you designed. You can't upgrade them into enemy designs. So then after you upgrade it, it is one of your ships. Fully one of your ships.
The collective is under attack. Activate all alcoves.
Yeah, well. Oh, the other amusing thing with the Shatnerverse thing was that it also postulated that the Borg had the ability to create transwarp nodes that were not actually in three-dimensional space.
Yeah, the space station in transwarp.
Which
cool.
is actually something that 7 of 9 hinted at the existence of in Voyager. Because she mentioned that transwarp gates didn't necessarily go to a different part of the galaxy. She didn't ever actually explain what she meant, but you know that was what one of the Shatnerverse things is that his take was that it, you know, transwarp gates sometimes would seemingly go literally nowhere.
Well, we say his take, but he had a couple of co-writers.
Well, like I said Shatnerverse, not, you know,
yeah.
Shatner.
Because when you let Shatner write on his own, you get Tech War.
I don't think he actually wrote that entire thing personally either.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just guessing.
Although it was apparently entirely his idea. He just didn't like. Well, okay. The way I understand it, it was a lot like J. Michael Straczynski in Babylon 5. He created the universe and like scripted the basic plot and left someone else to fill in the gaps to actually like make filmable episode scripts.
So what is that there that's on your screen there, Dragoon?
What?
That little ship?
This one?
Yeah.
It's one of the Undyne ships. It's a transmuter.
Oh. Okay. So it's one of your allies.
Yes.
Is a transmuter basically their version of resource production?
I think so.
The colony ship?
They're weird in the way they do things.
Yeah.
I think they're basically have almost been defeated. There's not a lot of red on the map.
The collective must grow. Objective received.
Yeah, they're not doing so hot.
R1.
Which, by the way, my Steam Runner build in Stowe is totally based off of Star Trek Armada. The long-range Tricobalt bomber.
Oh, yeah.
Adapting weapons array.
I have one as well.
I don't do the long-range Tricobalt approach. I do the approach of ram the Tricobalt device down your enemy's throat.
Well, yeah, that's how it works in Stowe.
Relocate.
You know,
Well, I mean, in Stowe,
you want shorter flight
theory,
time for the torpedo.
in Stowe, in theory, you could actually do it from range. It's just that most AIs in Stowe will shoot them down.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing a Tricobalt device, especially a high-yield Tricobalt device, flying towards them scares the AI, and they're like, no!
By your command. We are one.
Why aren't I seeing a tactical cube? Or a fusion cube?
We require regeneration.
You have a good point.
He must have the fusion cube.
Don't have enough cubes here. But this is worth my retreat.
Assimilated species engaged. Instructions received.
The Borg cut off their attack mid-attack. Why? It's a bad omen.
They must be plotting something. Scan every micron within 500 light years. They must know something we don't.
Negotiation is irrelevant. State objective.
Okay.
We will adapt.
I need more dilithium.
By your command.
You just keep it.
We will comply.
Going. Back.
Vessel construction complete. Insufficient resources. Unassimilated species engaged. Insufficient resources.
You know what? I got a couple of Romulan ships. You know what I can do?
We will adapt.
Cookie cookie?
Cookie cookie.
Hey.
Just fly over there and keep an eye on the Federation for me.
Remember, they might have tachyon platforms. You want to be careful
Well,
about how you're sending them in. You go
I'm
sneaky
not
back
that
route.
attached to the ship.
The collective is under attack.
I mean, they're expendable, right?
Relocate.
So,
Yep.
you know.
I can always assimilate more.
Alright, you
I mean,
assimilate,
assuming the Romulans make more than this, they might not live.
or you go for one of their construction ships.
Oh, right. So steal the shipyard. And this is one of those games where building units is actually the ability of the shipyard,
Ooh,
not
a
of the
Dideridex.
Empire.
Yeah, or yeah, the construction
Wanty,
unit is the one that builds structures, because you do that, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to build a starbase, and then you just basically start working up their tech tree. I have your civilization now. Look at all the Federation over here. They're having so much more fun.
You know what? That's actually like it's one of those weird things. Just like, all right, I have truly assimilated your civilization because I can now build everything that you could build.
Like, I've not only duplicated your civilization, I'm doing it better, because look at how much harmony is existing between all my different different collectives. It's basically like the Rick approach from Rick and Morty to to galactic warfare like this. Like, I'm just completely, you just outclass this, and somehow they'll still fall apart.
That's it. Good cubes.
Yee. Nom 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 nom.
I think
No, it's yours, yay!
Yes.
I just got to repair the systems.
Okay. Need more cubes, but I need more resources.
Assimilate.
Oh no!
Assimilate the Ferengi.
Ferengi.
I tried to
They're
assimilate
always
the
a
Ferengi.
enemy.
It doesn't do any good.
No, because you just basically give them their crew back.
Wait, does that mean that if the Ferengi can have a crew made out of Borg?
Kind of. I mean, they're just kind of invincible.
Yeah, they're really just
that's Borg.
they're there for
Yeah, basically to pick up the scraps from combat. So there's not really any ships just laying around.
Oh, so the Ferengi aren't a true faction. They're just like an NPC trader that pops up at random or something.
they're literally there for derelict cleanup.
Yeah. There might be a technical reason for that too, just to keep the NPC count down. And then it just creates this dynamic where you really want to be on top of trying to collect derelict ships, because otherwise you're lost.
Oh, I definitely want that.
Yeah, you got to worry too when you're taking over an enemy ship. If its life support systems are down, the crew will instantly start trickling down. So you got to give it enough crew that it'll basically survive until it gets its systems back online. Because yeah, as these ships are taking damage, they're losing systems, and that can include life support.
We serve the collective. Commence attack.
Or galaxies.
We will adapt.
You know, I just thought of something. I have never seen a one of these space strategy games that actually had multiple galaxies in it.
All alcoves. We require regeneration.
Yeah, it's kind of a big scale problem.
Must grow.
Eventually, in Space Empires 5, I actually noticed that if you have over a certain number of systems, eventually the turn processing takes like literally an hour because of the fact that there's just so much stuff that needs to be calculated as part of each turn.
Okay, I meant to send.
And it's funny, while you're doing this, I'm playing an STF where I'm fighting simulated Borg Klingons. Federation. I'm playing along from the other side. In our shipyards. Because, yeah, that's what the Borg are doing. It's just like, how we've taken over these units, and we're just going to start building Klingon ships and sending them at you.
By your command. We serve the collective.
All right, I'm gonna
Okay,
yours.
I thought of something else. If they were going to do a Borg cooperative faction. Okay, so they've been given, access to other faction ships for more, more and more.
I know where this is going.
More and more. So what you do is you offer every single ship to the cooperative faction. They can fly anything. They also get a special hull material and special cosmetic options for Borg stuff.
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking.
So basically, you can fly anything, and you can put an assimilated skin on it. Something different from the
STS
shield and stuff that they have now from the Omega Red.
Yeah, I think they're like, faction might be so hard coded, you still might have to do Fed KDF, but I think they could totally go that route where their ships, instead of having sort of unique ships that come along, just.
Well, I think you'd want to do that too, but.
Oh yeah, but just their main draw would be like, okay, you've got all these ships, and then they've got something that I was thinking that like they would have like a unique set of items, like a unique set of ship sets and consoles that would allow you to basically change the type of ship by changing the just basic principle of the equipment setup. So their whole take would basically be using existing ships, but in a completely different way. Because you have a lot of different item types available to them that aren't available to other factions. So
kind of like the transforming ships, only like to a higher level.
Or something that would sort of introduce like mechanics like singularity powers, but instead it is something that you would have just equipped to a ship rather than something that's just attached to singularity core. Actually, yeah, just think about singularity cores, but it's an item type you can put on any existing ship that only the Borg have. That then gives them special abilities.
Interesting.
But then they would also have the visuals too, where you would just get progressively. You not only have just a simulated look, but different kinds of assimilated looks depending on the the equipment set.
Yeah, well, like you could have one where the thing is like partially cubified.
Yeah,
but you can still see some parts of the original ship.
And then you also have ones that are sort of more just all sorts of different configurations. So you basically would start being able to kit bash with different consoles and stuff like that for different looks of Borg ships, and it just completely bonkers like that.
Yeah. And, I'm sure if somebody from Cryptic ever listens to this, they're gonna see that and think of it. God, the work that would go into that, I can't even imagine.
Actually, would it require sort of like? Would you even have to think about like all the kit bashing potential? It's just like you make each individual part just sort of cohesive by itself, and then
the problem is you're dealing with a lot of legacy parts.
Or no, I'm not
many years ago.
I'm not thinking about customization as in like you're adding parts to the tailor. It's just you're just making lots of new variants for in a very similar style to the current assimilated set, but just different. So like that, but different. And then you can start combining different components because you have similar things coming in from consoles. You have stuff for as part of the hull equipment.
State new directive.
Yeah, just a lot of just different, like what we have, but more so.
Well, they have demonstrated that it is relatively easy for them to add a new hull material to an existing ship, and new hull materials can actually change the texture of the hull. It's actually something that I noticed with the TOS ships, is that certain ones of them have ridges in the hull in places where the other skins don't.
Actually, one thing I'll say, though, on hull material options, they've said that it's actually pretty difficult to add that to existing ships. They can do it. It's just, it takes a lot of time.
It seems like shield, however shield visuals are made, it seems like that must be a bit easier.
Yeah, visuals are the easier. That's why I was thinking with all the board customization stuff, you have it as visual options for equipment, not stuff that's added to the tailor.
Yeah,
because tailor would be a lot.
That's probably the way to go.
Well, if we're using an analogy from Champions Online, it sounds like the shield visual thing. It works the same way that auras do in Champions Online, where it's this special device you equip, which creates a visual effect. Some of them are like ridiculously over-the-top dramatic visual effects too. Some of them are barely noticeable. Different ones do different things.
Well, your ally got defeated completely.
Yeah.
Wait, the Undine are wiped out entirely?
Wiped out.
That's why you need fusion cubes.
Working on it. I can't build them fast enough.
Yeah.
So you're attacked. Quite a bit.
You're turtling right now, right?
Yeah, and I shouldn't be.
Okay. Yeah, this is maybe a losing battle because they're gonna be hitting you with 2 sets of resources, and you're not. Yeah, you're just dealing with the resources from your primary system, so you haven't really expanded out. So. No more Ferengi. That's one nice thing about Species 8472. There's no crew mechanic, so you don't have to really worry about ever losing your ships to Ferengi.
That's interesting.
Yeah, Ferengi aren't taking your bioships.
Yeah, they're combining forces. I'm going to lose this.
No.
Which is good because we're coming towards the end of our time.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It works out pretty well that way. Yeah, this is basically how multiplayer generally goes.
For me.
Yeah, your ally goes down, and then you're just kind of left with like, oh, I'm kind of doing all right. It's just 2 versus 1 at this point.
That's one of the interesting things about Space Empires 5 is that with the way the maps is structured in Space Empires 5, it's actually not as easy for being attacked by 2 powers to overwhelm you as it is in a game with an actual a 2D map like this, because Space Empires 5 uses a warp point system instead of an actual solid map. So each solar system or whatever, not all of the map locations on the galaxy map are solar systems in Space Empires 5. Some of them are extremely unpleasant places that you only go through if it's a shortcut to some place you actually want to be.
Now, one funny thing with the screen right now.
At any rate, though,
the mini map for Star Trek Online, I've put that right next to my mini map or the Twitch window. So I got really confused for a second because they're about the same size. And it's like, wait, I can just actually put this as an overlay. There we go. The Stone mini-map is now showing Star Trek Armada II. Yes.
All right. So we got a new idea for a mini game here. You go to sit at the computer in your quarters and play Armada II through Stone.
That'll be easy for them to code in.
Absolutely.
The entire game of Star Trek Armada II, can we get that as a small windowed interface for your character on a ground map? Yeah, if Kale's listening to this, he's just thrown his pen at he's thrown at least a pen at the screen.
Or he laughed so hard he coughed up whatever his beverage was.
I think every games company should have just like a room of, dudes, just basically saying, "Hey, you know what would be cool?" And you take from that any idea that might actually work. You probably get like one good idea in a day, but still.
Yeah,
they have internet message boards for that. They don't need to have like an actual employee for that.
Although,
I'm trying to get myself hired on. I can't. I don't have the skills to actually do anything for the company, so just sit me in a room. I'll come up with ideas.
The ideas, guys.
Mm.
Yeah. I was just going to say, though, apparently, like, from what recent meetings, though, it appears that Kale has kind of taken up that role because you got into a thing about Jeremy, where Jeremy was just like, "Oh, please don't," and then Kale's like, "We should do it."
Mm.
It's basically Dragoon is down to what? Nothing.
I managed to salvage out a constructor ship.
Does it have the resources to build anything?
Maybe.
A few. Looks like.
Initiating station construction.
I can build a dilithium resource collector.
Yes. We're gonna work our way back up.
Unless they discover us. There aren't any good hiding spaces in this map.
No. Some of the other maps are a little bit easier to work with because they sort of like use asteroid fields to mark things off. This is basically just big open.
What can I say? I assimilated too grittily and too deep.
I used to do this intentionally in some of the Total War games where, I'd load up an army and send them off to conquer someplace way across the map in case my original country got invaded and destroyed. And so I'd ended up like, I'd be playing Britain and, I'd get completely conquered, except I still had this one place, over in Russia or something.
Well, that's one of the things that I would do in Space Empires 5 sometimes is send out cheap junk colony ships that actually had a very long flight range. And I would sometimes colonize like this little tiny planet off in the backside of the galaxy where nobody really knew it was there. And so I could just have this planet over here doing its own thing, building stuff. Because one of the fun things with this game was that didn't matter how far away from your empire a colony was, it would still be able to receive resources that were produced at your homeworld.
So basically, what you did was the Isaac Asimov Foundation model of how to rise to power in the galaxy. I'm just going to put something on the far end of the galaxy, and psychohistory will make me eventually galactic dominion.
Well, in one PvP game, I actually used a nebula to hide a shipyard, a portable shipyard, that is, one with warp engines attached to it, while it built an actual shipyard, and then the actual shipyard built troop transports and ground troops, which I then sent to invade someone's planet.
So they found my resource node.
They found your little resourcer.
But I anticipated that. I sent the assembler further south before they got there. So I still have enough resources to build another resource node.
Well, I mean, there is still some hope left, I suppose.
There's no hope.
The first PvP match, this is starting to get like the first PvP match I ever did in Star Trek Online, where it was basically, we just kind of like a fleet person says, "Oh, I'm just, people want to face us." Like, "Oh, okay." It turns out it was a super group of min-maxers. and they basically got duped into accepting the match, and we're just like, So everyone quit except for me. So instead of going into combat, I hid in the furthest corner of the map with a patrol escort. So they could find me, but they just didn't search that location. And I just stayed in that match for like half an hour, and everyone else quit but me. So I technically won.
I mean, hey,
Or I declare a moral victory because I'm the only one left. They all quit.
Well, I say we declare a moral victory on this one because Dragoon saved his constructor, and we're at our time limit.
We will assume he won.
Yep. Yeah, we'll say he won.
For the record,
you went on.
I do have enough metal left that I
could.
Epic attack
force.
So I would stay here, and assuming I'm not discovered, I would eventually get enough dilithium to rebuild the starbase and then restart over. In fact,
eventually.
You should save this. I want you to try that.
I'm going to save this. Save game.
Oh yeah, that's one of the fun things in Space Empires 5 with stealth in that game, is that if you're cloaked and your opponent doesn't use mines, you can actually just fly straight through a barricaded warp point. And just hide, just wander around in your opponent's solar systems at will. Okay, there's a caveat to that, is that sensor technology does beat stealth. It's just that your sensor technology level that you're currently using, not the best you've researched, but the best that is currently scanning that specific sector of space, needs to be higher than the stealth level of the ship that they're flying. Oh, yes. That was fun.
Well, that'll do it for us this evening. So I hope you enjoyed a little bit of Armada 2 here. And as always, we're hoping to get the Foundry up soon. So
yeah, really. This is have we beat the old record yet?
Oh, no,
Probably
not by
not.
a long shot. No, we would need to go several more months.
What was it?
Close.
The right after Agency yesterday, there was a really, really long one, right? Like multi-months.
That was the Lights of Zetar bug, and then there was the really long downtime for server bugs. I think was our longest. That was last year.
Technically, that was a series of downtimes, though, not a full sustained downtime, wasn't it?
Well, it kind of came back up to a limited extent, and publishing wasn't solved, so we got missions up for a little bit, then everything went down again. So there's a blip, but it definitely wasn't anywhere close to a full Foundry coming back online. So it was still, that's our longest downtime. Then it was Artifacts, then Season 4. It's longer than expected, but there's a couple of reasons for that. So, and they're not actually really to do with the Foundry. It's just a lot of other stuff going on right now.
Yep.
They're trying to get it back online, and we know they're doing stuff with the Foundry recently. Because they had to ping Greendragoon about how to beat Midas.
What?
Well,
okay, that sounds like an interesting story.
Yeah.
So they're doing their internal stuff for the Foundry.
Yeah, they were testing it.
They're
Use my
doing
mission
some
as
testing.
how do you beat the puzzle in your mission?
I should have just played Apex. Just get past the optional dialogue. That's how you beat it.
Well, in the meantime, we will say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.